I always prided myself on being a man of logic. A man who saw the patterns, the numbers, the cause and effect in every situation. That's what made me good at my job and what made me sure that, if something was off in my life, I'd be the first to notice. Apparently, I was wrong. It started like any other evening. Too late, too tired, too much left to do. I rubbed my temples, staring at the time glowing on my screen. 7:15 p.m. Another long night at the office. My colleagues had filtered out hours ago, the chatter of the day long since replaced with the quiet hum of computers and the distant whir of a cleaning crew vacuuming the halls. I sighed, stretching my arms over my head. 8 years in corporate strategy had trained me to see the game before it was played, the flaws before they broke the system. But I still hadn't figured out how to stop working myself to the bone. Closing my laptop, I grabbed my jacket and stepped out into the cool night air. The city lights flickered like 1,000 quiet signals, each one whispering about life happening out there. People going home, meeting friends, living. I exhaled, settling into the familiarity of my drive home. I just wanted to see Vanessa. She had always been the balance to my sharp edges, the easy laugh when I overthought, the playful nudge when I got too serious. While I buried myself in spreadsheets and projections, she lived in the moment. I used to admire that about her. Now, I was starting to wonder if I had mistaken carelessness for spontaneity. I pulled into the driveway of our quiet suburban house. The lights inside were dim, the curtains pulled shut. Strange. She usually left at least one light on. Stepping inside, I immediately felt it. That off-kilter, something's not right sensation that settles in your bones before your brain can explain why. Vanessa. Silence. My brows knitted together. Normally, she'd be here, teasing me about working too late, wrapped in one of my old hoodies, her legs curled up on the couch. I closed the door behind me, listening. Then I remembered, she had plans tonight. A movie with her friends. She had mentioned it in passing earlier that week, some rom-com she had been excited about. I shook off the unease, heading to the kitchen to grab a quick snack. And that's when I saw it. A white plastic stick sticking out from the trash can. I wasn't sure why I even noticed it at first. Maybe it was the way it stood out among the tissues and grocery receipts. Maybe just some subconscious reflex. But the second my eyes focused on it, a sharp, inexplicable dread curled in my gut. I took a step closer. Slowly, I reached down, pulled it free. And I felt the ground shift beneath me. 2 pink lines. A pregnancy test. Positive. My pulse hammered in my ears. I stared at it, my brain refusing to compute what I was seeing. Pregnant. That wasn't possible. I couldn't get her pregnant. Not because of a choice we made. Not because of precautions. Because of me. Because 6 months ago, a doctor had looked me in the eye and told me that I was infertile. That I could never have children. I remembered how much it had crushed me. How I had spent nights staring at the ceiling, trying to process it. Vanessa had held me then, whispered that it was okay, that she loved me, that we were enough. And yet, here was proof that something was terribly wrong. My breath came slow, shallow, controlled, like my body was trying to keep up with a reality that didn't make sense. I turned the test over in my hand, as if looking at it from a different angle would change what it was telling me. This couldn't be happening. Maybe it was old. Maybe she had taken it before we knew. Maybe. No, this was fresh. And there was only one way this could be possible. I stood there, fingers clenched around the evidence, staring down at it like it might burst into flames in my hands. The silence of the house wrapped around me, pressing in from all sides. The late nights. The distant look in her eyes. The way her phone was always face down. This was real. I took a slow, shuddering breath. A sharp, cold weight settled in my chest. I wasn't just imagining things. Something was wrong. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I wanted to know the truth. Because I already knew. I just wasn't ready to face it. I didn't sleep. I tried. God knows I tried, but every time I closed my eyes, the pregnancy test flashed in my mind like a warning sign, screaming at me in ways I couldn't ignore. Vanessa was pregnant. And it wasn't mine. I spent the night in the dark living room, my fingers gripping the plastic stick like it held the answer to everything. The house was silent, the kind of silence that doesn't settle but lingers, waiting for something to shatter it. By the time the front door finally clicked open, I had convinced myself of one thing. I needed the truth. Vanessa stepped inside, moving slower than usual. I stayed still, watching her. She didn't see me at first. She looked different. Her sweater was loose and slightly bunched at the hem, like she had been tugging at it absently. Her jeans, normally crisp and fitted, were creased in ways that didn't make sense. She turned, startled when she spotted me. "Oh," she said, blinking. "You're still up." She tried to play it off, her voice light, but there was something behind it. A fraction of a second too long before she spoke, a shift in the way she held herself. "I couldn't sleep," I said, keeping my voice steady. "How was the movie?" She hesitated. Not long, but long enough. Then she smiled, rubbing her eyes. "It was fun. The girls and I grabbed a drink after. You know how it is." I nodded slowly. "How's Madison?" I asked. Her brow furrowed. "Madison? You said she was the one planning the night out, right?" Another pause. A flicker of something I couldn't quite place. "Oh, right. She's good," Vanessa said quickly. "Really tired, though." We all were. I studied her, my heartbeat slow and deliberate. She was lying. Easily. Naturally. And she thought I wouldn't notice. She stretched her arms over her head. "I'm exhausted. I need to lie down." She didn't wait for a response, just turned and headed toward the bedroom, her steps slow but steady. "Can you bring me a bottle of water?" she called from the hallway. I didn't answer right away. Just watched the empty space where she had been. Then, I grabbed a bottle from the fridge. As I approached the bedroom, I hesitated. The door was slightly ajar. The light from the hallway cast a thin line across the bed. I pushed the door open fully, stepping inside. Vanessa was already asleep. Judging by the smell, she had drunk too much. Still in her sweater. Still in her jeans. Didn't have the energy. The water bottle felt heavy in my hand. Something about this felt off. I moved closer, setting the water on the nightstand. She was breathing evenly, her lips slightly parted. I reached for the blanket, ready to pull it over her, but then I hesitated. Her jeans looked uncomfortable, twisted around her legs. It wasn't unusual for me to help her when she crashed like this. I had done it before after long flights, late nights. She never liked sleeping in heavy clothes. So I reached for the jeans, carefully working them down. And then I froze. There was nothing else underneath. I stared, my hands still gripping the fabric. For a long second, I couldn't process what I was seeing. I swallowed, a slow, deliberate movement. Then I reached for the hem of her sweater. It lifted easily, and as it slipped over her head, the truth hit me like a freight train. She wasn't wearing anything else. The room seemed smaller suddenly. Tighter. I pulled the blanket over her, my movements mechanical. My hands weren't shaking, but something inside me was. This didn't make sense. Vanessa had always been modest. Even when it was just the two of us, she never slept like this unless it was for a reason. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that reason had nothing to do with me. The thoughts swarmed faster now, the connections forming in real time. Her strange behavior, the excuses, the sudden distance. And now this. I stood there for a long moment, watching her, my heartbeat a steady, deliberate drum against my ribs. Then, without thinking, I reached for her phone. She always kept it next to the bed. It was face down on the nightstand, her charger plugged in but not connected. I picked it up. Screen locked. But I knew the password. Her mother's birthday. The screen flickered to life. I opened her messages first. Nothing suspicious. Then her recent calls. Same thing. I almost put it back. Almost convinced myself I was being paranoid. Then I opened her videos. And stopped breathing. The newest video wasn't taken by her. I knew because she was in it. I tapped the screen, and the footage began playing. It was shaky at first, but the voice was clear. A man's voice. Low, amused. "Kiss me, baby." The voice wasn't hers. It was a man's voice. Low, teasing, too familiar with her. The person filming wasn't visible, but his words were crystal clear. Vanessa was laughing. She was sitting at a table in a bar, leaning forward slightly, her eyes half-lidded, her lips curved in a way that made my chest tighten. Her movements were slow, relaxed, intimate. Then, she shifted, her body tilting toward whoever held the camera. And judging by the way she moved, the way her lips parted slightly, she was about to kiss him. The video stopped there. Abrupt. Final. Like someone had deliberately cut off the proof before it became undeniable. I stared at my phone, clutching it in my hand. My mind was a whirlpool. I sent this video to my phone. Vanessa had no idea I was watching this. No idea that, in the course of one night, I had gone from suspecting to knowing. I exhaled slowly. On purpose. Vanessa had lied to me. She lied easily. And she had walked through that door, looked me in the eye, and carried on like nothing had happened. I set the phone down, my pulse calming. Not because I was at peace, but because the rage had settled into something colder. More calculated. I didn't wake her up. I didn't shake her. I didn't demand answers. Because I already knew what she would do. She would lie again. She'd say I made it all up. That I was being paranoid. That I was imagining things. And I wasn't going to give her that chance. No. I wasn't going to confront her. Not now. First, I was going to destroy her world, just like she had just destroyed mine. Morning arrived like a slow burn, creeping in through the blinds, casting light across the bed where Vanessa slept peacefully, like she wasn't living a double life. Like she wasn't a liar. I sat on the edge of the mattress, watching her, my mind running through every possibility. I had the proof. The video. The pregnancy test. The lies upon lies. But the truth wasn't enough. Not yet. I needed control. Vanessa stirred, letting out a soft sigh, stretching beneath the covers. Then her eyes fluttered open, locking onto mine. A small, drowsy smile touched her lips. "Morning," she murmured. I forced a smile back. I had never been a good actor before. But I was now. "Morning," I replied, my voice even. She yawned, rubbing at her eyes. "What time is it?" "Almost 8. She groaned. "Ugh, I'm still so tired." She stretched again, shifting beneath the blanket. "I think I drank too much last night." I held back the urge to laugh in her face. Lying came so naturally to her. So effortlessly. "Yeah," I said. "You passed out pretty fast." She chuckled, completely oblivious to the fact that I had seen everything. That I knew everything. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, scrolling idly through emails like it was just another normal day. But my mind was already 2 steps ahead. Vanessa sat up, running a hand through her hair. "I should get ready for work." I glanced at her. "Are you sure? You still look exhausted." She hesitated. "Yeah, I guess I do feel kinda drained." Then, with a little laugh, "Maybe I'll go in late." "Perfect." I leaned in, brushing my fingers over her wrist. "Take it easy today." She smiled, leaning into my touch. I wanted to recoil. Instead, I kissed her forehead, feeling the weight of everything she had destroyed between us. "Relax," I murmured. "I'll bring you coffee." She sighed contentedly. "You're the best." "No, Vanessa. I'm not." I left her in bed and headed for the kitchen, my heart pounding like a war drum. I poured her a cup of coffee, stirring in the exact amount of sugar she liked. But my mind wasn't on the coffee. It was on what came next. The first step had already been taken. Before she even woke up, I had spent the early hours of the morning securing my next moves. Our joint accounts? Emptied. Every cent transferred into my private account. Credit cards. Cancelled. Passwords to our utilities, subscriptions, and anything with her name on it? Changed. I had spent years making sure we lived comfortably. I had given her a life of stability and trust. And she had taken that trust and ripped it apart at the seams. So, I was doing the same. Piece by piece. I walked back into the bedroom with her coffee, setting it on the nightstand beside her. She smiled at me again, sipping from the mug like she wasn't sitting across from the man she had betrayed. "Thanks, babe," she said, curling her legs beneath her. Lies. 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 She sat there, sipping her coffee like nothing had changed. Like she wasn't sitting across from a man whose entire world had just imploded. I watched her carefully, weighing my words, feeling the weight of the truth pressing against my ribs like a loaded gun. I wanted to pull the trigger. I set my mug down deliberately. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. "Vanessa." She looked up, her expression neutral. "Yeah." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the pregnancy test. Her face didn't change. She didn't gasp. She didn't recoil. She didn't look guilty. She just stared at it, her fingers tightening around the handle of her mug. "What is this?" I asked. My voice was too calm, too measured. Her lips parted slightly. "Where did you get that?" I almost laughed. "That's what you're going with?" She swallowed, her throat moving slowly. It's not." "Not what?" I cut her off, my tone like ice. "Not real. Not yours. Not what it looks like." She hesitated. And that was all I needed to know. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't confused. She wasn't crying, telling me that it wasn't possible, that something was wrong, that she had no idea how it got there. She was just stalling. "You can't be serious," she finally said, shaking her head. "You're acting like..." I took out my phone, swiped to the video, turned the screen toward her. Her breath hitched. It was so small, so subtle, but I caught it. Her whole body locked up. She tried to play it off. What is that?" I pressed play. And there she was, sitting in that dimly lit bar, leaning in, her expression soft, her voice light and teasing. "Kiss me, baby." She reached out, toward the man behind the camera. And then the video cut off. I watched her, not the screen. The way her fingers curled into her lap. The way her jaw tensed just slightly. The way her entire body went still like a deer caught in headlights. Vanessa wasn't confused. She wasn't angry. She was caught. "I don't," she started, but I cut her off again. "I want you to say it," I said, my voice low, controlled. "Say the words, Vanessa." She shook her head quickly, standing up. "Nathan, you're overreacting. I don't even know who took that video." "Don't," I snapped, standing up too, my chair scraping against the hardwood. "Don't insult me like that." She backed away. A small step. I had never raised my voice at her before. Never made her feel like she should be afraid of me. But now, I wanted her afraid. Because she had ripped apart everything we built, and now she wanted to lie her way out of it? I wouldn't let her. "Tell me the truth." My voice was steel now. "Tell me who he is." She crossed her arms over her chest, defensive. "Nathan, I don't." I slammed my palm against the table, and she flinched. Guilt. Not fear. Not anger. Guilt. I pointed at the phone, the screen still lit up. "You sat there. You leaned in. You didn't push him away. And you want me to believe you don't even know who that was." Vanessa's breath was shaky now. I was drunk. She was scrambling, looking for a lie that would work. I let the silence stretch, let her feel the weight of it. Then I said it. Whose baby is it? She actually took a step back. Like the words hit her harder than anything else I'd said. She didn't say anything. A bitter, empty laugh tore from my throat. There it was. Not a denial. Not a plea of innocence. Only miserable silence. You don't know. I repeated, my voice hollow. Is that why you were relaxing last night with strong drinks? I held up a hand. I didn't want to hear it. Didn't want to listen to whatever pitiful lie she was about to craft. You need to leave. She blinked. What? You heard me, I said, turning away from her. You're leaving. Today. Her voice cracked. Nathan, please. No, I cut her off. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear you try to twist this into something it's not. I don't want to hear you beg. I turned back to her, staring at the woman I had spent years loving, the woman I had given my heart, my trust, my everything to. She wasn't that woman anymore. Maybe she never had been. Her eyes glistened with tears. But she didn't deny it. Didn't fight me. Because she knew she had lost. She wiped at her face, swallowing hard. I have nowhere to go. I exhaled, forcing myself to stay in control. The last step was the house. Her breath hitched again. She knew what that meant. It was registered in my name. I had always been responsible, making sure everything was financially stable. That had worked against me in the past. But now? It was working in my favor. A few phone calls. A little bit of paperwork. And soon, Vanessa wouldn't even have a place to come home to. The door slammed shut behind her. For a long time, I just stood there, staring at it. The house, my house, was silent. The kind of silence that wasn't peaceful, wasn't comforting. It was the kind that settled into the bones, that echoed in the space where something used to be. She was gone. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt everything and nothing all at once. My fists clenched at my sides. My breathing was steady, but my chest was tight, like something inside me was trying to claw its way out. My mind was a storm. Flashes of her face, of her voice, of the lies that came so easily. I had thrown her out. I had watched as she gathered a few things in a daze, stuffing them into a bag with shaking hands. She hadn't fought me, hadn't screamed or begged. She had known. The moment I showed her the truth, she had known. And now, I was standing in the wreckage of what we used to be. I let out a slow, measured breath and turned away from the door. The house looked different now. Not physically. Everything was exactly where it had always been. The couch, the framed photos, the little messes she used to leave behind. But it wasn't ours anymore. It was mine. I walked to the living room, letting my fingers trail absently over the back of the couch. My legs felt heavy, like my body was catching up to the weight of the last 24 hours. I had won. Then why did it still feel like I had lost? I sat down, elbows on my knees, pressing my palms to my face. I should have been furious. And I was, but beneath that, beneath the fire, there was something heavier. Something I didn't want to admit. Loss. Not of her. She was never mine to begin with, not really. But of the illusion. The illusion that my life was whole, that I had a partner who loved me, that the home we built together meant something to both of us. I had spent years thinking I was safe. That we were solid. That no matter what, we had each other. And in a matter of days, that entire foundation had collapsed, revealing that it had never been real. I lifted my head and stared at the framed wedding photo across the room. She had been smiling, radiant, looking up at me like I was her whole world. It had been a lie. The anger surged again, coiling tight in my chest, and before I could think, I was on my feet, moving toward the shelf. The frame hit the ground with a sharp, splintering crack. Glass shattered, spreading across the hardwood. I stood over it, breathing hard. Then, slowly, I crouched down, picking up the torn photo from the wreckage. Her smile stared back at me. My grip tightened. Then, I tore the picture in half. It was like cutting the last tether, severing the last thread that still connected me to the illusion of what we had been. I tossed the pieces into the trash and straightened. She was gone. And I was still here. And that had to mean something. The next few hours passed in a strange blur. I moved through the house with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. First, I took her things, the things she hadn't grabbed in her rush to leave. Her perfume, the extra shoes by the door, the small collection of books she kept on the coffee table. I packed them into a bag, not with care, not with hatred, just with finality. Then I went to the bedroom. The bed still smelled like her. That familiar lingering scent that used to feel like home now made my skin crawl. I stripped the sheets, tossed them into a trash bag. Everywhere I looked, she was there. In the little details. The things I had ignored before, the things that had once been ours. I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this house stay a shrine to her betrayal. I grabbed my keys and left. The first stop was the store. I bought new sheets, new pillows, new everything. I didn't even check the prices. I just wanted her gone. The second stop was a donation center. I handed over the bag of her things without hesitation. When they asked if I needed a receipt, I shook my head. I didn't need proof of what I had let go. When I got home, the house felt different. Not better. Not yet. But lighter. I made the bed with the new sheets. They didn't smell like her. They smelled clean. Fresh. Mine. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was reclaiming something. Like I was pulling myself out of the wreckage. It was going to take time. There were still cracks. Still wounds that hadn't healed. But at least now, I was standing on my own. That night, I sat on the couch, staring at my phone. Vanessa hadn't called. Hadn't texted. She knew better. I exhaled, unlocking the screen. Then I did what I should have done the moment I found that test. Blocked her number. The final thread, cut. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I sat there for a while, just breathing. The house was different now. The space beside me wasn't empty. It was just mine again. And for the first time in days, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't let myself believe was possible. Hope. Not for reconciliation. Not for revenge. For something better. For a future where I wasn't defined by her betrayal. I leaned back, staring up at the ceiling, my chest rising and falling with steady, even breaths. Tomorrow, I'd wake up in a house that was finally free of her. And tomorrow, for the first time in years, I'd wake up as just me. The ink had barely dried on the divorce papers when I realized something. I wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't whole either, not yet, but the weight I had been carrying for so long was finally gone. The day the final documents arrived, I expected to feel something. Maybe relief, maybe anger, maybe some last, bitter ache of regret. But when I opened the envelope, all I felt was light. It was over. I stared at the signature at the bottom of the page. Vanessa's name, written in neat, slanted letters. Once, seeing it would have reminded me of love notes, of little messages she used to leave for me on the fridge. Now, it meant freedom. I set the papers down, exhaled, and ran a hand through my hair. It was done. People talk about grief like it's something that follows a straight path. Loss, anger, sadness, healing. A neat, predictable pattern. But the truth is, it comes in waves. Some days, I felt nothing at all. Other days, I'd catch myself hesitating before grabbing 2 coffee mugs instead of one. I'd go to text her something stupid, something I used to text her without thinking, and then remember. She was gone. And I was better for it. That was the hardest part to accept. That even after all the pain, after the betrayal, after the wreckage of everything we built together, I wasn't the one who lost. I was the one who got out. She was the one who threw away something real. And for what? A secret, a lie, a moment of something that would never last. I didn't need closure from her. I just needed to close the door myself. At first, I kept to myself. Not out of shame, I had nothing to be ashamed of, but because I didn't want to answer the questions. I didn't want to hear the sympathy. I can't believe she did that to you. I already knew what she did to me. And I wasn't interested in being the guy people pitied. But people notice when you disappear for too long. It started with a call from David, my oldest friend, the one I had slowly drifted away from over the years as marriage and routine took over. I let it go to voicemail at first. Then he texted me, "Don't be an idiot. Let's grab a drink." I stared at the screen for a while. Then finally, I texted back, "Yeah, let's do it." One drink turned into a long night of catching up, of laughing, of realizing how much of myself I had put aside for a marriage that was never as strong as I believed. I had been disappearing for years. But now, I was coming back. I stopped waiting for the sadness to find me again. Instead, I filled the silence with things that made me feel like myself again. I went back to the gym, not for revenge, not to get back out there, but because I had spent years neglecting my own well-being, putting her needs first. I reconnected with friends. I started going out again, not chasing distractions but just living. For the first time in years, my life wasn't built around someone else. It was just mine. And I liked it that way. The last time I heard from Vanessa, it was through a mutual acquaintance. A casual conversation, a passing comment. She's been struggling. She regrets it. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. Because I knew exactly how she felt. She had made a choice. She had destroyed what we had. And now, she had to live with that choice just like I did. Only difference. I was moving forward. She was stuck. I never responded to her. Never reached out. Never let her have a moment of my time again. Because Vanessa was my past. And I had no interest in looking back. One evening, I was sitting outside a cafe, sipping coffee and watching the world move around me. I wasn't waiting for anything. I wasn't searching for someone. I was just existing. For the first time in a long time, that was enough. And maybe, just maybe, for the first time in my life, the best part of my story was just beginning.